Eagles. Eagles.
Good morning, Eagles Nation. Welcome into a Tuesday edition of Birds 365. Getting ready for Week 6 matchup, Eagles versus the Cleveland Browns this week. Johnny Mac, how you doing on this Tuesday morning?
Doing well. Yeah, almost back to practice for the Philadelphia Eagles. Been a long week.
Anything on the schedule today for the Philadelphia Eagles in terms of you going down there, or I guess you said you don't go down until Wednesday, but any pressers today or anything?
Not going down till Wednesday. They try to keep us out as long as humanly possible.
Yeah, they do.
Good
stuff preparing for this game, everybody. Coming off of a tough loss, John, obviously, but a couple news breakings yesterday, as we just talked about pre-show.
Is it breaking?
Not breaking. John's been saying it for weeks, but when it gets confirmed by James Palmer that the two star wide receivers will be back this week, Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown. And then, John, I'm going to ask you also about the Sidney Brown practice window opening up. So we'll start with Sidney. Your thoughts on the practice window opening up, John? I tell you what, I see that, and everybody all over my social media feeds is like, "Oh, Sidney Brown's going to play. And I'm like, where's he going to play? Are they going to usurp C.J. Gardner-Johnson? Is he going to be out there in a couple big nickel?
First of all, he's been out for 9 months. As Vic Fangio said last week, just some rust to knock off. It's amazing to me with injuries, and way too many people assume they're in some kind of stasis, and the minute they're let out of the box, they're the same as what they were before. It's going to be a slow ramp up period. They got 21 days. There's no guarantee he's even going to be active for Cleveland, although I think he will be, because he's been raring to go for a while, and that's an injury that takes a certain amount of time to heal. And about 7-month mark, you typically feel like you're 100%, but you're not 100% from the actual healing of the graft and all the stuff that needs to take place from a medical standpoint. So that's why they wait the full 9 months. And ironically, Monday was the full 9 months. So yesterday was literally the full 9 months. He was hurt on January 7th. So, he'll start on special teams when he's out there, and then mix in. What it does do is it gives you a way more depth and way more confidence and way more versatility. If CJ continues to play poorly or something happens of that nature, hopefully he can turn it around. You have another option that you have some confidence in. But this is still a developing player. He can play in the nickel. You can play big nickel a little bit more to help that run defense, which has been an issue at times. So it's good to get him back. Very gifted player, very talented. You can see the 99-yard touchdowns, how athletic he is. He looks the same. He's been at practice since, the beginning of camp, working on the side fields. You see him sprinting all the time. He looks tremendous. He feels tremendous. But yeah, he's not getting inserted to a major role right away on the defense. A, as you mentioned, there's nowhere for him. And B, you want to ramp up a player who hasn't played in 9 months. If you have you don't want to just throw him into the deep end of the pool.
Yeah, no way.
So, and as I said, Vic talked about him. He was asked about him last week. If people maybe were tuned out a little bit because of them going on the bye and disappointment over Tampa Bay. And he basically said, we all have to have some patience, which is not a virtue of many when it comes to the NFL. And he said, which I know isn't a big virtue amongst all of us this time of year. The guy hasn't played any football since his injury. I believe it was the first week of January, which is correct. His OTAs and training camp are going to have to be squished together fast, which is ready to do. He's ready to do mentally and emotionally, but we have to be careful ourselves not to overdo it with him. So overdo it from a physical standpoint and an expectation standpoint. That's from Big Fangio.
So we'll see how Sidney Brown ramps up. The other guy that was, I guess the practice window was opened up for was Anais Smith. Big shout out to James Carver in the chat. I don't anticipate he'll have any big role, but that is the other news of the day. John, let's get into those wide receivers.
Punt return.
Oh, okay.
Now, and the thing about Anais was, let's be honest, he wasn't significantly hurt. That was as close as you get to a stashing situation in the modern NFL. But if Cooper DeJean starts in the slot, they may want to, say focus on that. Don't worry about punt returns. And then you need a punt returner. And that may be a fit, but he's got to show up and he's got to play better. He's got to have confidence. He's got to prove. I can't imagine it would happen right away. They got Jahan Dotson who can return punts. So they have a lot of ways they can go, and they could just double dip with Cooper. But the fact that he's at least he can get out there and practice. And the Eagles are going to have to make a decision. There's 21 days, as I mentioned, about him. And he's a young player. He had some issues. He had a bad camp, but he was getting better finally. Stopped dropping the football. And he'd like a second chance, whether it's here or somewhere else. So, holding him hostage isn't the way to go. So they'll have to make a decision, either put him on the 53 or you got to put him on injured reserve for the rest of the year. And boy, I hope they don't do that because, again, it's a young player. And if you don't, who cares? It's a 5th round pick, Howie. All right. You missed on a 5th round pick. Get over it. Let the kid have a second chance somewhere else.
Yeah, hopefully they do that for him, but we'll see what ends up happening. John, real quick before I ask about those receivers, a lot of talk in Eagle Land about Cooper DeJean stepping in for Avonte Maddox in the slot. Avonte Maddox really hasn't played his best football. It's funny with Avonte because coming into the year, he was always a decent player. Like his problem was never on-field play; it was more staying healthy. Well, he has not been good this year on the field. A lot of people calling for Cooper DeJean. Do you think Cooper DeJean will be your starting slot corner? If not this week, when would your prediction, I guess, or expectation would be for that?
I'd be surprised if it's not this week. Vic kind of intimated it before the bye. Plus, would be the time to do it, to pull the trigger. If he's not out there this week, that's a really bad sign from my perspective. That just means Vic doesn't think he's ready to play. And then it could be an extended situation. But this is the obvious point of the season where you can get him involved. And the fact, as you mentioned, Avonte has not played well. No guarantee Cooper's going to play well. But he does offer some, I just mentioned, run support with Sidney Brown. Same thing with Cooper DeJean. Very small window of it against Minnesota in week 3 of the preseason, but you saw some of those run blitzes that Vic likes to do to stop the run, and he seemed to have a good feel for it, where that's not a strength of Avonte Maddox, it seems. So the coverage part of it, that's going to be interesting because he didn't look good in coverage in his small opportunities. And I think people don't realize he barely played nickel in college, was mainly an outside corner. So there's a chance Vic says he's not ready, but the way he was talking before the bye, I think they're gonna pull the trigger.
Yeah, we'll see. Hopefully, Cooper does get out there. A lot of people clamoring to see Cooper, as am I. Obviously, the Eagles' 2nd-round draft pick this year, 40th overall, they took Cooper DeJean. So we'll see if he can get in there and make up for some of Maddox's pretty poor play overall. Appreciate that super chat, brother. We're going to get to you in just a second. John, wide receivers coming back this week. What do you expect that to do for the Eagles offense?
Oh, everything. And don't forget Lane as well. I mean, one thing, I think you saw it again last night. You know, it's boring, so nobody talks about it. Everybody talks about the quarterbacks, and Derek Carr stinks, and he's good for 2 weeks, and their offensive line fell apart on snap number 3 against the Eagles, and hasn't been the same. The Saints I'm talking about. And I say it all the time. If you can't block people, you can't play offense. Doesn't matter what you have at skill position players. And, they're signing, I know Connor McGovern, the story there, he's getting ready to go to London with the Jets, and they signed him off the Jets practice squad, and he's the starting center against Steve Spagnuolo in blitzing. By the way, Aikman, I don't know if Aikman's like, Steve's not known for the blitz. I'm like, what are you doing, Troy? Is nobody prepping
what else
for
Troy
this?
did a lot? You know what else Troy did a lot last night? I did hear that. That was a dumb comment, but he was giving a lot of credit. A lot of credit to Jalen Carter, wasn't he? I mean, he must have mentioned Jalen Carter 4 or 5 times.
He's a very talented player. That Spagnuolo reference just floored me. I'm like, what? Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah, normally Troy doesn't make mistakes.
No,
like that.
Normally he doesn't. Normally he's very good.
Yeah, he's one of my.
And by the way,
one of my
that was right before they sent a zero blitz that essentially, that hurt Derek Carr, which was ironic as well. Yeah, that was weird. Anyway, that's why I bring that up. But yeah, the offensive line, and you can look at it, and you don't even have to go to other cities to look at it. The difference between Lane Johnson and Fred Johnson in Tampa was immense. But it's boring. People don't want to talk about that. And why isn't Derek Carr playing like he played in the first 2 weeks? Well, it's pretty obvious if you think about it. But poor offensive lineman.
Yeah, we'll see. You're right, though. Lane Johnson coming back will be massive for the Eagles O-line. Fred Johnson, John, just didn't hold up in the second game as well as he did in that first game. So I don't want to beat up on him because we're expecting Lane Johnson levels of play. Not that we are from Fred, but that's what we're used to. He definitely did not do that. So we'll see if this Eagles offense can get back on track. Johnny Mac, before I get to it, I do want to get into the defense. That's where I want to start. On today's show. I want to welcome and thank everybody, by the way, for being here. Great crowd in here already. The fans are ready, Johnny Mac, for this team to get back on the football field. Hopefully they do not let everybody down going up against the ugly-looking Browns team right now, John, and we're going to get into them. But Joe Whip, Joe Ho, Eagles fan, Flexing and Steppin', Jay Dilla, Kevin Savard, Daz, what's going on, everybody? Abe, Jason A-Team, what's up, Jason? Kevin Savard, appreciate all of you guys. For being in here. General JD drops a super chat, Flexing and Steppin'. A couple people looking for the JAKIB sweatshirts this morning with the brisk morning, John. I got the first samples coming in today of the JAKIB merch, so I'm excited to get that up.
I hope I get some. Come on.
Yeah, I'll get Johnny Mac some. Don't worry, Johnny Mac. I'm working on a big old care package for you, so we'll get all that in soon. Let's get to that super chat, John. And this is interesting because I don't know how you're going to feel about this super chat, but General JD asked a good question, and Jimmy Kemsky wrote about it on Philly Voice as well. He says, J-Mac, how far will Nick have to get this year to keep his job and change the narratives about him? He can win games, but I think the noise is getting to him. And I will say this before you respond, John. The Eagles' next 4 opponents have a combined record of 5-15. So on the inverse of that question, I would wonder if they struggle through that stretch and maybe come out 3-5, 4.
Oh, that's not good. That
right. I think Nick could. I mean, the Eagles have shown they're willing to make a move midseason. They did it last year with Sean Desai. I'm not saying Nick's going to get fired. I'm just saying this is kind of a crux 4 games where it's like it's almost so bad you better handle your business or else. But to answer JD's question, how far will Nick have to go this year to keep the job, and not only keep the job, but change the narratives about him?
Boy, I think he's got it. Well, he's not changing the narratives, period. End of sentence. Barring a Super Bowl. And that's what I talked about from the start with the setup. the fact that this is on Jeffrey Lurie's plate, and the fact that he did not see this is abysmal. Either he's not listening to people because it was pretty obvious, or he just didn't care. But yet he can't turn around the narrative, barring a Super Bowl championship. So number one, he can't change the narrative, barring that. As far as what he will have to do to stick around, I don't think one playoff win gets it done, especially if he gets blown out in the second one. So I think a lot of it has to do with how it ends when it does end. If it's another Tampa performance, he's probably gone no matter what. If he gets to the NFC Championship game and you get the Tampa performance, that's a difficult question, but people are going to be calling for his head, no doubt about it. It depends on Jeffrey Lurie and what he thinks the end game is. So I'm sure he's got a contingency plan. And I know a lot of people have focused on Bill Belichick. That's not his history, obviously, if you think about who he's hired. But so that kind of depends on his contingency plan. But as far as the biggest, and that's been, I've talked about it a lot. That's been one of my biggest things. He can't, no matter what he does, he can't win. He can't win. And Jeffrey Lurie set this up because if they're successful, it's Vic or Kellen. And when they're not successful, you've already seen it. Oh, this isn't Kellen Moore's offense. This is Nick Sirianni's offense. You've already seen it. And Jeffrey Lurie set this up. And the fact that he didn't see this coming is not good. And it's only going to get worse unless they win and win at a high level. That's the only thing that can save them, is winning at a very, very high level. Because if they go to the Super Bowl and they lose like they did last time, it's going to be Nick Sirianni.
It's so true. I'm sure Nick saw this coming in. I mean, I guess you're there's one of 32 of these jobs. Not all of them last long. So I think Nick probably understood that coming into this game. I'll tell you the other thing that could save Nick's job is Jalen Hurts playing like an MVP. Again, that would help Nick. But there's one thing I do want to dismiss, and we're going to get to this later in the show, not right now. So don't, I don't want to dive too far into it, but the notion, and John, you've kind of woken me up to this, and I don't want to pick on JAKIB Nation here. And it's not just JAKIB Nation. It's really Eagles fans everywhere. But the notion that every bad play call is Nick and every good play call is Kellen is pretty foolish. I don't think that's a thing we should get into. So I'm going to ask you a little bit about play calling and the offensive philosophy later on in the show. We'll do that in hour number 2. But I just wanted to say that just because I keep seeing that in the comments, and I'm like,
it's beyond foolish.
That doesn't make sense. It's easy for us to go there, but that doesn't make sense. So
it's the lowest of the low hanging fruit. It's ridiculous. I mean, if you just step back and take the emotion out of it, if you're one of those people saying that, stop, look in the mirror and say, why do I think that? Why would I think that I know who's calling one good play and who's calling one bad play? You don't like the guy. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But that doesn't mean everything bad that happens is his fault, and everything good that happens is the reason, is the guy you like, and probably will turn on later down the road.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about that later in the show, because I do have a couple questions about that in regards to the quarterback and obviously the play callers and Nick, and how it all fits together. John, I'd like to get your take on that. So we'll do that a little bit later on in the show. John, I do want to talk a little defense right now. I have a stat. Let me pull it up real quick on my iPad here. Watson has been sacked, John, 26 times in 5 games. Is this the opportunity for the Eagles edge rushers to get going this week. That offense, John, has been putrid. They have not had over a 300-yard game. I believe they're the only team in the NFL that hasn't had it yet. Deshaun Watson just, I don't even want to say looks like a shell of himself. He doesn't look like anything like himself. He looks like a completely different player, and that player stinks. Is this a good opportunity for Vic Fangio to kind of get his defense humming, especially those edge rushers who have been kind of a letdown early in the year so far?
Yeah, well, yeah, it is. And I think, we just talked about the offensive line. I should have brought up the Browns. I mean, when they're healthy and Jedrick Wills and Jack Conklin and Wyatt Teller out there, they're one of the best offensive lines in the NFL. And when they're not, they've been a disaster. And the same thing, and that's part of it. Now, Deshaun's not playing well. I'm not going to defend him, but right now, it's a bad offensive line. So, yes, this is an opportunity for the build-up Eagles to get going with the pass rush. And it's not only about Bryce Huff. You want to get Bryce Huff going, but you also want to get Josh Sweat going. And he's performed well at times, and the pressures are there. But, sacks come in bunches and all that kind of stuff. You want to see Jalen Carter. We talked about it, more consistency. I don't necessarily care about Jordan Davis when it comes to the pass rush, but, Milton Williams, somebody like that, you need to get multiple players going. And this game is an opportunity because not only do you have a banged up offensive line that can't deal with people, but you also have a quarterback who tends to hold on to the football. So that is a formula for success with the pass rush. And I'm sure, Kevin Stefanski knows the Eagles well. Jim Schwartz obviously knows the Eagles well if they want to lean on him. The reputation of the Eagles around the NFL is still, and I know this is hard for people to believe, still that their front is very talented. And, people tend to game plan for that burst. If that means speeding up Deshaun Watson. I think Kevin Stefanski should learn from the New Orleans game because he plays the similar type of offense. So he's got to try some different things. But they're just not very good right now. So it's an opportunity to get better everywhere, not just the pass rush, but certainly the pass rush.
Yeah, they're going to have to be better. And, Kevin Stefanski, talk about a lose-lose situation. I mean, he can't, his quarterback is stinking it up. So you're right, though. Offensive line is struggling over there. So we'll see if the Eagles defense can kind of get going. What about the secondary matchups, John, in this game? What do you think of them coming in? Cleveland doesn't have the greatest group of pass catchers. I mean, they have Amari Cooper. They have a couple other guys. But how do you think the Eagles match up with them defensively in the back end?
Well, it's not great versus not great. If you want to be honest, because the Eagles haven't exactly set the world on fire. But no, as you mentioned, they don't move the football.
No,
and
I mean, it's surprising because their names aren't that bad there. I mean, they have
but
Amari
you
Cooper,
see,
Jerry Jeudy, and
Amari
Elijah Moore.
Cooper's good route runner, very productive receiver, always known for some drops though. Jerry Jeudy, as an never lived up to the hype.
No, I didn't.
He had a big drop last week as well. Elijah Moore's got some wiggle to him, but again, not all that productive. They have bigger names than production.
Yeah, it's
and
true.
Part of it is all, again, it's boring, but I mean, you can't block people, you can't play offense.
Yeah.
And you add in the quarterback's not playing well on top of it. Now, from the Eagles defensively, they have good players. They have a lot of good players. And maybe they're getting frustrated because of how bad the offense is, but that is a very gifted defense with a very good defensive coordinator that people know. Myles Garrett's not healthy. He's playing through a bunch of foot stuff. And I remember Lane Johnson, that, his quote to me when talking about toe spacers was, playing football sucks when your feet hurt. He said it with a different word, but it just sucks. And you can imagine how badly it sucks. And that's what Miles is dealing with. So that probably helps a little bit because that is a great, great player. Can't say enough good things about Myles Garrett. But he's not healthy. They got good linebackers, although Wosu Koromoa is banged up, and Jordan Hicks, our old friend, is banged up. But they got players. Denzel Ward's a great player. Grant Delpit's pretty good. Greg Newsom's a good. They got a lot of good players on defense. So
was it Owusu Koromoa who had that interception last week on Daniels? Because that was a nice interception.
I believe so. He was the one with the Guardian cap, the Guardian cap on.
I don't blame him for wearing them. I got to be honest.
So yeah, but he's very good. And again, we talk about linebackers, and there was an opportunity. He was a second-round pick, should have been a first-round pick, but
yeah, I remember him coming out.
They found some kind of abnormality that kicked him down a little bit. That was a cost-effective, at some point where you're weighing the cost benefit, the risk reward, to take a shot on him in the second round turned out to be a really good decision for Cleveland.
John, what's Vic Fangio's philosophy or game plan, I guess would be a better word, for Bryce Huff coming into this game? I think as we've talked about, the whole 3-down lineman experiment is not looked good. Do you think he'll shift that and kind of get him into the passing down situation where he can pin his ears back and go after the quarterback? Or what do you think his game plan will be with Bryce Huff coming into this game?
I think, I hope he changes coming out of the bye.
For his sake and for Bryce's sake.
Exactly. It doesn't make a lot of sense to keep going down the route they're going down. And at least give it a try. As I said, if he's a one-trick pony, I'm fine with that, but let him use the one trick. And then if he's not, then it's on Howie's desk, because he made the personnel evaluation. And maybe he's just not a fit for the scheme in general, but I look at Jim Schwartz on the other side and say, that's a fit for Bryce Huff, but they're not running that. And I think it comes to a point where you say, all right, well, I got to take advantage of the player and not be held to my scheme. And eventually, when you can get the players to run what you want to run, that's when you go in that direction. I always go back to 2021, and a lot of people didn't even know Jonathan Gannon was running Vic Fangio's scheme. And, the reason why is because you didn't see a ton of those 5-man fronts, because that was pre-Jordan Davis, and he had to play Javon Hargrave at nose tackle, which is not taking advantage of Javon Hargrave.
Right.
Plus, when you talk about the overhang players, he didn't have Hassan Reddick, so you're trying to get it done with Jannard Avery. So he played a little bit. He played more. He leaned into more of the 4-man fronts, and he played a little bit differently because he didn't have the personnel to do what he wanted to do.
It's amazing how many sacks we got that year with that.
And then the everything took off in 2022 when Reddick and Davis and
gotcha.
Linval got here, and he could play the style that he wanted to play. That's what you have to do. You gotta take advantage of who you have at a particular time, and you're working towards your scheme and you're perfecting that. And maybe they pick up the players to finish it up next year, but he hasn't looked like a 3-down player, and you can keep pounding the square peg in the round hole. You're probably going to get similar results.
Yeah, we'll see how they handle this. I mean, this Browns team is just not good. It almost seems like it's unlikely that the defense wouldn't have a better game this week, but we'll see what they do. I want to thank everybody for being here this morning. We've got a big crowd, a couple super chats we will get to before we get to our first commercial break. And then I got to talk with John about the Eagles offense, about the play calling, about Nick, about Kellen, about Jalen, all the things that Johnny Mac is not the biggest fan of talking about in terms of the setup there. But we will talk about it with him because I got some questions on it. So we'll do all that coming up next. Before we do that, General JD, John followed up. He said, totally right with expectations. You'd think we're 0-4. JD, John's been talking about expectations for years here on Birds 365. Brian Fleming checks in. Would you take a loss to the Browns if it meant Sirianni getting fired immediately? Also, J-Mac for president. Brian Fleming with a J-Mac for president.
I wouldn't say I appreciate the president. I think I could do a better job than the candidates. That might be my ego, but that's more of a shot at the candidates. But Nick's not getting fired, so I wouldn't hope for a loss to the Cleveland Browns. He's not getting fired in season, unless he turns into a malcontent.
What if the Jimmy Kempski hypothetical came true?
Which is?
Well, he didn't. I mean, I don't want to put it on Jimmy Kempski, but he did his mailbag where somebody asked him, and he said, "Look, if they're 3-5 after these next 4 games, and the Cowboys and the Commanders are taking a bigger lead in the NFC East, and even partially to blame on Nick Sirianni, I wouldn't rule it out."
Yeah, I would. Not going to do it in season. Jeffrey.
So if they go 1-3 in these next 4 games with an opponent win percentage of 5, they're 5-15. I know it's early in the year, so it's tough to use that as this overall metric. But boy, John, if they go they're calling for Nick's head now, and we're 2-2. If he goes,
yeah, I mean, I mean, they'll call. They could end up 2-2 in this stretch. You know.
Yeah, I mean,
I think 4-0 is obviously where you want to be. 3-1 is where you should be. 2-2 is, people are going to be calling for his job. 1-3, obviously. 0-4 would be a disaster. I just don't think Jeffrey would do it because he understands what's the end game. You're going to elevate Vic, and if you elevate Vic, is Kellen pissed off? I think most people assume you elevate Kellen at this point. Then you piss off Vic, and then, by the way, Kellen Moore's offense has been, that's the biggest self-scout thing. We got to talk about this team and their first drives. It's freaking embarrassing.
Yeah, well, we're going to the offense after the break, so we're going to get into that.
And again, but people will say, well, that's Nick. No, it's not. I can't. People are going to believe what they want to believe. He's scripting those plays, Kellen Moore. And it's been an abject disaster. And that's who you want to be the head coach. At least Vic's been a head coach. Not a good one, but at least he's been one. This guy's got no experience. Now, I don't think it's going to get to that point. They're not going to, these teams are so bad, it's not going to get to that point. But I get what you're saying.
I mean, the only reason I think Kellen, John, is more attractive to people is because
he's younger. And
well, no, but it's also the offense thing, right? Where you have a lot of people that talk about, and I think it's fair, but it's kind of the nature of the setup here in Philly. The revolving door at the coordinator position for Jalen will never end unless you have a play calling head coach that handles the offense. And I think that's what people dream of having, because it will bring some stability to Jalen's game. Remember, the best year we've ever saw with Jalen Hurts was the second year of Shane Steichen. And I think that's what people are stuck on. And if you go the Vic Fangio route and your offensive coordinator has a good year and then he gets hired away, or he stinks and he gets fired, it's just a continuous revolving door.
Yeah, well, I wrote about that. I talked about it. I said, that's the nature of the NFL, how we talked about it. You lose people when you're good, you lose people when you're bad, and everybody has this constant turnover.
Yeah, but the best way to mitigate that, right, is to have a play calling head coach.
It is, but I would remind people none of the nonsense stopped when you had Andy Reid. In hindsight, so I mean, that's overblown. I'll just say that, because, all right, Jalen's never played more poorly than he has in the first quarters with any of his play callers than this guy that you want to be the head coach.
Yeah, I'm not saying
So that's not that's number one. So is it clicking between the quarterback and the play caller? And then in this town, I think you've seen in the way with the evolution, forget about the evolution of Jeffrey Lurie, because he's the guy who makes these decisions. Whether it's whatever reason, he's gotten less patient as he's gotten older. So you have these small sample size. They won a damn Super Bowl and they kicked the guy out of the building in 3 years. They made a Super Bowl and they want to kick a guy out of the building. The assumption Kellen Moore's going to be here for an Andy Reid like shelf life. I mean,
you're right. You're fighting.
You talk about pie. You talk about pie in the sky. I mean, boy. I mean, people like the unknown. I get it, but yet, it's not even unknown anymore. You've seen 4 games, and by the way, you know what Kellen Moore's got to worry about? And I'm not even blaming Kellen Moore because it's more on the injuries and the quarterback than Kellen Moore. But you know what Kellen Moore's got to worry about? This is his third job in the third year.
That's where I was going. Yep.
I mean, and you're talking about, we got, not you. I'm not picking on you, but we're talking about Kellen Moore being the guy who's going to be here for 10 years. Boy, I guess it's possible. I would put that at a very low percentage.
Yeah. Well, that's a good dose of reality right there from you, where it's like, it's easy to think Kellen would be this great head coach. He's on his third team in 3 years. If he gets fired here, it's looking bleak for Kellen's future. So we'll figure out what ends up happening. One more super chat, John, before we get to our commercial break. James, good to see you, man. I gave you a shout in the beginning of the show. I'm not sure if you were in. I saw you check in around 15 to 20 minutes in. Anais Smith, James. The practice window has been open, brother. Your man is coming back, or maybe not coming back. We'll see. James says, J-Mac, Kellen's offense hasn't been bad. It's been the players and not being where they should be, especially giving a lot is timing. And as you've pointed out repeatedly, we haven't had starters since first game.
Well, yeah, I always go players first, and every single game, 4 games, first drive, they've had, I think it's 12 yards on 13 plays or 13 yards on 12 plays, something ridiculous like that. Every single opening drive, they've gotten behind the sticks because of something. Opening day was slipping on a crappy field. The only positive play they've gotten is a Grant Calcaterra 15-yard pass, and then they got an illegal man downfield penalty on the 1st and 10, which set him behind the sticks. Then it was Jalen Hurts losing 3 yards on a quarterback run, and it was another penalty. It was actually 3rd and 7. The last penalty was on special teams when Braden Mann was already out to punt. But every single first drive, they've gotten behind the sticks. And this comes, and again, for those who want to talk about Kellen Moore as a head coach, the day he got here and was introduced to us, all he talked about was a clean operation, clean operation, clean operation. He didn't talk about play calling. He didn't talk about motion. Clean operation, first and foremost. And they don't have a clean operation coming out of the gates. But yes, it's always players first. Always.
Well, I'm going to talk more to you about that clean operation coming out of the break. I'm going to get into the offense a little bit. Coming up, I'm going to talk about Jalen Hurts. I want to talk about Nick Sirianni. I want to talk about Kellen Moore and how they can get this thing fixed, get back on track. So I'll talk to you about that. There's also a line of thinking that I want to run by you, John, and I want to see if you think it's bullshit or if it's fair. So I'll run that by you next after the break. Appreciate everybody being here this morning. Kenny P, B-Mo, DRC. What's up, everybody? Twiz the Jig is in here. Niles in here. Jarrell Ray. What's up, Jarrell? Appreciate it. Kwam Pugh. What's up, Kwam? I appreciate everybody, man, being in here. Got a great crowd this morning. Hit that like button if you're enjoying this morning's Birds 365. Jacob Nation's been showing out, John. The Birds 365 numbers have been crushing it. And shout out to our podcast listeners as well. Up over 1,000 per day on our podcast. So thank you guys. That's our most ever in a season for Birds 365. So if you're listening on a podcast, I want to thank you as well. I know we don't read your comments or anything because you're not on YouTube, but I do appreciate your support of the show. Let's get to our commercial break. Birds 365, everybody, back in 3 minutes with some offense, Kellen Moore and Jalen Hurts talk.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.
He's blocked well and tries to cut through the middle. Oh!
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on Sports Grid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on Sports Grid. Score and save in southeastern PA and Delaware with Colony Pools this football season, and let the experts close your pool with a custom Merlin safety cover in green for the birds. And if you join our Winter Watch team, we'll give you another 20% off, and Colony Pools will handle it all. Keep your tiles on your pool, not in your pool. Fly with Colony right now, Birds fans. Visit flywithcolony.com.
Hi everybody, my name's Jason Lombardi. I'm an inspector at DryTech. At DryTech we offer three major services, the first one being basement waterproofing, the second service we offer is foundation and structural repairs, and then the third service that we offer is mold remediation. If you feel you are having a waterproofing issue, give DryTech a call or check us out online.
Heading down the shore, have a ball once more.
Here, imaginations run wild and time stands still. Because here, you can find the best of the Jersey Shore, all on one 5-mile island. So leave the old you behind and get lost in the woods.
Wild, wild, wildwood day.
Plan your stay in the Wildwoods today.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome back in, everybody, to a Tuesday edition of Birds 365. Getting ready for the Week 6 matchup, Eagles versus Browns, a 1 p.m. game at the Link on Sunday. If anybody's going down, please drop it in the chat. Love to see what of JAKIB Nation, who's going down to the game. It is a home game, second home game at the Link this year. Should be a good one. We'll see if Eagles can get back on track. John, I want to talk a little bit about offense. Before I do that, Jarrell checks in, John, and Jarrell says, if y'all are in Florida like me, stay safe. Jarrell, I'll echo that. I got some family down in Florida, obviously, so definitely stay safe. That hurricane is picking up steam, so everybody stay safe. I know we have, John, our third most popular destination of listeners outside of Pennsylvania and New Jersey is Florida. So everybody,
get out of Tampa. The Bucks already got out.
Yeah, if you're in Tampa, man, you got to get out. Tampa's going to be bad. So I have some family down in Naples, and then I have some family in Orlando. So it's kind of going right through there. So we've been in communication with them, trying to see what's going on. So hopefully everybody in Florida stays safe, man. Obviously don't want to see any more devastation like you did from the last Hurricane Helene that just rolled through. So hopefully everybody stays safe. Johnny Mac, let's talk some Eagles offense, man. I have a wide point of view question for you before we get into some of the nitty-gritty. Do you see any similarities or some of the same play calls from the 2023 offense to the 2024 offense? And when I say that, I mean, you see a lot of people saying, oh, this is still Nick's offense. Yeah. And I know it's not. I'm not saying it's Nick's offense, but I'm saying, do you see similarities in the two of them that you didn't expect to see through the first 5 weeks of the season?
No, because you have the same quarterback. So, I mean, that's the one thing where I think really people don't get. Like Kellen Moore wasn't coming in here and turning Jalen Hurts into some, new quarterback who does new things and was always going to default to what he does best, which is why the Eagles played offense the way they played offense. That's generally what you try to do. I think, a lot of the motion stuff was the biggest red herring. Anybody who listens to this show knows I've been saying that for a very long time. Because number one, it's in vogue around the NFL, so that's part of it. So people think it's successful because everybody uses it. Really, everybody uses it because there's so many coaches on the tree that uses it, the Shanahan Kubiak tree. So it's sort of like the Big Fangio offense where everybody copycats. So you have Miami with Mike McDaniel, you have Green Bay with Matt LaFleur, you have now Atlanta with Zach Robinson, who comes from the Rams, and Sean McVay. You have San Francisco, obviously, with Kyle Shanahan. You have the Rams with Sean McVay, and on and on and on. You have all these teams that use the same kind of scheme. Minnesota with Kevin O'Connell's another one on. So you get my point from that perspective. So those are all the top motion teams. Now, typically, Kellen's a guy who likes motion, likes it. First press conference, asked him, his dad liked it. He likes it. That's why he uses it more than being a strict Shanahan type guy. And I think people saw, Seth Walder put it out after the 4th game and saw the Eagles were 19th in motion, said, see, that's Nick Sirianni taking over. What they missed is, the Eagles were 32nd last year and are up over 100% in motion from what they were last year. Still, even though Kellen Moore's down, that's how far up they're up in motion rate. However, he does not have a quarterback, Kellen Moore I'm talking about, who is comfortable with it. So, and you also don't have, it's a very small sample size. And the 4th game, you didn't have your receivers to run it with AJ and Devontae. Right. So who'd you have out there? You had John Dodson, who just got here, John Ross, who got here off the street, along, with guys who aren't used to playing. So that affects it as well. So way overblown that people look at a chart and say, and even with all that, they're still up over 100%. But one of the things, like in the London game this week, Aaron Rodgers does not like motion. Phillip Rivers does not like motion, which is where Nick started understanding those types of quarterbacks and what they want formationally to get information. There are more than one way to do things in the NFL. And it generally comes down to what your quarterback likes, what your quarterback wants. And if anything, the Eagles seem to be straddling the fence. Because of what happened at the end of last year. And now it's in the middle. And they're trying to get Jalen Hurts up to speed with what Kellen Moore likes versus what he was successful with in the past, and trying to get back to executing that properly. And you get some ugliness. But bottom line is, to James's point earlier, when Lane Johnson gets back on the field, A.J. Brown gets back on the field, Devontae Smith gets back on the field, you're all going to be fine because it's going to look fine. I'm not saying we're not going to sit here and nitpick, but it's going to look good because they're going to have a top 5 offense, barring more injuries.
Yeah, we're going to dive into that real quick more. Just a comment on the motion. John, did you happen to see Luke Kuechly on with Daniel Jeremiah and Bucky Brooks talking about motion?
I did not, but
I
Luke
should have sent you it because it was really good. But he basically said what you say about motion with the way the Eagles are using it. But then he also said, you know, fast motion at the snap, which is what he used, and you'd have to explain exactly what he means, with dynamic weapons is a nightmare for linebackers and nickel defenders, but the Eagles' style of motion puts no stress on the defense. I thought that was interesting.
Well, it puts no stress on Luke Kuechly. It could put stress on others. The Luke could.
Yeah, well, he was just talking about that there's different types of motion, and I think like San Francisco's type of motion is stressful in a defense.
Well, he's talking about it's more of the CFL version. You see it from the Shanahan teams,
right?
And you can move. You don't have to get. So they've started this. You can sort of get the head start, but they try to replicate it as much as possible. Where you almost have this. You can't start going forward before the snap. But you see guys now rounding it off. It's really close. And at some stage, the NFL might make this a point of emphasis down the road, and they might start calling it. Because I saw somebody, boy, it was really well done to the point they rounded it off at the moment the football was snapped, and it looked like almost a CFL play. And they've started doing that, and I think that's what Luke is talking about. That puts tremendous, especially when as he said, it's a playmaker. But that guy, I mean, you can search. I'm sure it's on YouTube. I mean, that is one of the guys who calls out plays like it doesn't matter what you're running. Yeah. He knew what was coming.
He was a tremendous football player.
The normal motion like the Eagles have been running is not going to affect a player like Luke Kuechly at all.
Yeah,
but that doesn't mean it can't affect players who don't have discipline. That's generally what you're trying to do, and that's what Jim Schwartz would explain to me. You're basically testing the eye discipline of the players, the defenders, and the players that are disciplined. It's not going to affect much. Players who aren't disciplined, it can affect.
Yeah, I thought that was good though. Listening to Luke Kuechly, obviously a guy who's he's maybe one of the better linebackers to ever play the game. Very very good player. But John, back into a little bit of the offense. How much of this do you think is on Jalen then? I mean, people talk about it's the same as Nick. And by the way, I know you hate that comment, but Nick opened up that can of worms.
Oh, I said that. I said that.
I know you did. But I'm just reminding you. What a dumb comment.
That was. Well, you can look at it two ways. If you want to defend Nick Sirianni, he's protecting his guys, number one.
Yeah, which is fair. I'm okay with him doing that.
That's a positive. But yeah, he shouldn't have gone down that route. He shouldn't have gone down that route. And I said it day one. And people will keep referring back to that. Well, he called that play, so he must have called this play.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a dumb thing to do.
How much of it do you think is on Jalen Hurts? I mean, people talk about the
a lot of it, but Lane Johnson. I'm going to look it up. Lane Johnson, 92 pass blocking snaps this year. 0 pressures allowed. 0 pressures allowed. Fred Johnson, 71 pass blocking snaps, 16 pressures allowed. What I said about New Orleans and Cleveland, same thing with the Eagles. It's boring. Nobody wants to talk about offensive linemen. But when you're harassed, nobody's going to look good at quarterback. Now, is that giving a pass to Jalen Hurts? No. The Jalen has not played well.
I think some of it has been seeing ghost with that. when Lane's not out there. Because there was a breakdown on YouTube that somebody did. It's that franchise guy's his channel, and it was really a good breakdown. But he goes through some plays, and you can see Jalen still has a clean pocket, and he just something goes in his head that he goes into scramble mode. And I think maybe part of it is Lane's not out there, and he just doesn't trust his pocket.
Well, and that's just one game, but and it'll get better. Soon Lane will be out there, and it'll get better. And then AJ hasn't been there for 3 games, so that is the bigger impact. But now you're going to have both back, and you're going to have Devontae back, who missed 1 game. And yeah, I mean, I don't, that makes a big difference, people. That's arguably, and I would argue, the 3 best pure football players the Eagles have.
Yeah.
And they weren't on the field in Tampa. They will be on the field against Cleveland, and hopefully for the rest of the season. And that's meaningful. Very, very meaningful. And everybody will get better because they're on the field. And the offense will be very good because they're on the field. And now you're back into, all right, pick your poison, Jim Schwartz. What are you going to do? Who are you going to try to take away? So, a lot of the offensive issues will fix themselves just by the talent on the field, which is why I'm still more focused on the defense. But I get why this team is pathetic offensively when A.J. Brown is not on the field. And it has to be better, but at this stage, it's not better. And all you can do is hope that he stays healthy for the rest of the season, because they are an abject disaster when he's not on the field.
Yeah, they really are. It's almost impressive how much
it is. It's ridiculous that a receiver. I even if you want to look at Jefferson or Chase or Hill, they don't, when they're out, those teams have other playmakers who can step up and do certain things. Not obviously not at the level of those players, but it doesn't look like the Eagles. You expected a quarterback, like look at Miami with Tua's not, I'm not even a Tua guy. I think he's a middle of the road quarterback, but he's middle of the road. That means one of the best 16 quarterbacks in the world. And the difference between him and the backups is pretty significant, to say the least.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be that way with a receiver, no matter how good the receiver is.
That's where I think people come to the quarterback, where they want to see the quarterback elevate the team like that, not the receiver, but that's the setup here in Philly. So, John, there's a lot of expectation. I think that this offense would potentially be more pro style with Kellen Moore. That doesn't seem to be the case. Do you think that's because that's what Jalen Hurts is good at, or that's what he likes, or your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, yes, that's what he's good at, and that's what he likes. The people who wanted basically to play action and have him under center, yeah, we're going to strip you of your football stripes. Yeah, that's terrible. That's a terrible idea. So you try to accentuate the strengths of your players. So why are you going to do what a player doesn't do well? That's my argument with Big Fangio and Bryce Huff.
Right.
And I think it's a significant issue. If the Eagles had Jalen Hurts under center a bunch and are going traditional play action, yeah, you would not like that.
I think you're right about that. I think the concern is that Jalen hasn't looked great in the pocket. His pocket awareness hasn't been good, and there's some concern about that. Because look, John, the other reality that goes into the evaluation of Jalen Hurts, and that's from me, that's from all the fans, I think, is looking at the guys around him. And I know he hasn't had AJ for 3 games this year, but You look at some of these quarterbacks around the league that are, slicing and dicing and putting up yards, and I mean, most of them, 98% of them don't have the type of weapons that we have in Philly. And I think that puts even more pressure on Jalen to not, to be able to extract the most out of them that he can. And when he doesn't, I mean, it's just he's in the bullseye.
Yeah, but those games are outliers, right? You don't want to throw for 400 yards in the NFL because that generally means
You're behind.
behind and you're trying to catch up and you're throwing. Like I brought up the fact that, how can Brian Flores have a defense that's number 1 in the advanced statistics and number 3 in number 32 in passing defense? How is that possible? Well, it's possible because they led in every game except for 3 minutes and 20 something seconds. That's it. So they're always playing from the lead. Teams are down by significant margins, and all they do is drop back and throw the football. As I mentioned, Rodgers threw it 50 times. Love almost threw it 60 times. You don't want quarterbacks. Thursday night, last Thursday night was the Kirk Cousins game. You're going to overtime. They're desperate. They're a second away from losing. Oh, he's got 500 yards. It's not fantasy football, man. You don't want your quarterback throwing for 500 yards. You might like it in the moment. It's not sustainable. And I think everybody points out, like, look at all the other games. Look at Josh Allen going 9 for 32 or whatever the hell it was.
Not good.
And again, if you don't look at Derek Carr with an offensive line versus Derek Carr without an offensive line.
Yeah, he hasn't been good.
Yeah, it's not sustainable, number 1. And so, the highs are like, would you like to have everything? You'd like to have everything because as you go through an NFL season, you're going to have to win games a bunch of different ways. And that generally tells the good teams from the bad teams, right? If you don't have your offense, like Sam Darnold played like crap in London, but they found a way to win the game. That's actually a positive. Kansas City's won a bunch of different ways over the years, winning Super Bowls. That's a positive. You find different ways to win. So it'd be nice to say, oh, can we go win a shootout? And I think the Eagles can when AJ's on the field, Devontae's on the field, Lane's on the field. They can win a shootout, but they're going to win it in a different way. They're not going to win it with 500 passing yards. They're going to win it with a bunch of big plays in the passing game, but also a bunch of big plays, extended plays, running the football by the quarterback. They're going to do it a little bit of a different way. But everybody gets excited when a guy throws for 500 yards, which has happened 13 times in the history. 500 yards and 4 touchdowns, 13 times in NFL history. It's not like it's common. So, I wouldn't stretch for it or stress that, oh, they can't do that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the other part of it is that many believe, whether right or wrong, and I perhaps fall into this category as well, the better way to win long-term in the league is to be able to do it from the pocket. And sometimes Jalen struggles with being able to do it from the pocket. And you bring up the Kirk Cousins game, and while you're completely right, you don't want your quarterback throwing for 500 yards because it means you're behind every game. He's making Drake London and Darnell Mooney look like superstars, and they're no A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. There might be good players, but they're no A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, and I think that's where people, whether right or wrong, like I said, that's where they start to wonder, what could be if Jalen was better from the pocket.
Well, he's had games where he's been tremendous from the pocket. Is the consistency there? No. Is he a high volume thrower? No. But again, I'd rather have Jalen Hurts than Kirk Cousins, even Kirk Cousins before the Achilles. And that's the guy I always use, because if you look at his consistency from the pocket and his accuracy, it's top tier, and it's been that way for over a decade. And he's got so many 4,000-yard seasons. He can do it in his sleep as long as he's healthy. But there's a bunch of stuff he can't do. So I'd rather
Even
be
with this roster, you think you'd take Hurts over Kirk with this roster, the way it's set up?
with the Eagles roster. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Kirk's underrated. I had this argument with Jody a million times. He is so well respected around the league. Everybody knows how good he is at quarterback in this league, and that's what matters most. But there's also limitations, and I would rather have, in this era of football, a guy who can do both as far as mobility and throwing the football. And I think Jalen at his height can do both. Unfortunately, he's got to get back to where he was. Like the Jalen Hurts of the Super Bowl, that's plenty good enough. That's the ceiling. You've already seen the ceiling.
I don't. We haven't seen that in a little bit, but you're right. He was unbelievable in that game. There's no doubt. You cannot take that away.
Well,
from
I don't mean the game. I mean the season. Jalen Hurts,
but also the game.
Jalen Hurts was plenty good enough that season. Can he get back to that? He needs to get back to it. He's already proven he can do it. But I see no evidence that he's going to get back to it. That's the problem. But there's still a bunch of. I mean, I haven't done it in a while. I'll have to look at it. But I would still put Jalen probably 11, 12, somewhere in that range as far as NFL quarterbacks. And
that's where I would put him overall. I don't think that's where he's been through the start of the year. Now he's missing a lot of guys, so I get it, but I don't think.
Well, again, that's Derek Carr looks great when he has an offensive line. Doesn't. I'm taking everything into account. He's still very good. He's still very.
Well, let me ask you, because you just said, you take Hurts over Cousins, which I don't have a problem with. But you're set that basically then you believe that, because both quarterbacks, every quarterback has their flaws, right? Every quarterback is going to have some deficiency. You're saying that you'd rather have the deficiencies of Jalen Hurts and take the positives of Jalen than have the deficiencies of Kirk, which is he can't move and some of those other things.
Yeah, everybody's got flaws. You're trying.
Yeah,
so
that's
I'm going down the list. Jordan Love, I probably want more, and I'm probably jumping there, to be honest, because that's more upside than anything else. But I'd rather have Jordan Love. I'm thinking, no, I'd put Jalen ahead of Baker still. Brock Purdy, you can argue. I'd probably go Brock Purdy at this stage. That'll make Jody happy. Jared Goff's an interesting one, but I think I think everything's got to be perfect for him. I'd still go Jalen. Remember, what I'm saying here when I do this is they both have the same exact situation. And if they both have the same exact situation, I'd rather have Jalen Hurts. I'd still rather have Matthew Stafford. I like guys who understand how to play the position. And that's why.
Well, that's why I'm a little surprised that you said Jalen over Kirk. I'm not saying Jalen doesn't understand how to play the position, but he definitely has a more unconventional style.
No, it definitely got a way to go. And Kirk's much more prepared to handle things.
Yeah.
But Kirk's got. Remember, the guys I'm going to put who know how to play, and the two I can tell you right off the bat are Matthew Stafford and Aaron Rodgers. They have some mobility. They can do some things that Kirk can't. Kirk is so stationary, I think it becomes a problem. Justin Herbert, who's not playing well, I'd still take him. Patrick Mahomes is obvious. CJ Stroud is obvious. Lamar Jackson is obvious. It's very early, but I'd rather have Jaden Daniels. But that's just Josh Allen is obvious. Kyler Murray is very close. I know people get upset by that. Joe Burrow, I'd rather have.
But Dak.
Dak, you could make the argument. I'd rather have Jalen than Dak, but that's uber close. And I know that's a cop out because it's Eagles Cowboys. I'd rather have Jalen. And that's it. The entire league. And a lot of it's projection, obviously, with Jaden Daniels. I just love that particular player. You know,
Jane Daniels can play. John, did you see that touchdown pass from the pocket?
yeah. I mean, I love the player, and Caleb Williams is, he's got immense talent as well. But I'm not at that stage with him because he beat up on the worst team in football. But Jaden Daniels, I'm in John Gruden quarterback love with Jaden Daniels.
Have you seen his channel, John? Oh my gosh, is it good?
Yeah, I have seen parts of it, but
Gruden loves. Oh man, is it good?
Nobody falls in love and falls out of love with quarterbacks quicker than John Gruden.
I believe it, but man, his channel is tremendous. As a guy that does YouTube and stuff, I love watching John Gruden. His channel is really good. It's good stuff there, John. We're gonna throw another commercial break. Actually, before we do that, let's get to the super chat. I didn't even see it come in. James Carver, thank you, brother. Big $20 super chat there from James. James, appreciate you as always. He says, and remember how many people complained about AJ and his antics last year? It's crazy to realize had the Eagles traded AJ, this team would be dead in the water. He needs to retire here no matter what. AJ and CMC are the truest MVPs. I don't think they were ever going to trade AJ, James Carver, but I guess people talked about it before their contracts. It was like, oh, if you're going to pay Smitty, how do you keep them both? And, how he figured out a way to do it. But I will say to James's point, John, AJ Brown is like, is there any other? And I think obviously this year he's over CMC, but is there any other non-quarterback in the league that's this valuable to a team? It's unbelievable.
Well, I think you see how valuable Christian is. By the way, you know who you saw how valuable? I'm going to take credit for this one as well. Aaron Jones. What a football player. What a freaking football player. The minute he left that game was completely different. And by the way, he Randy Moss somebody on a wheel route. When I talked about receiving backs, he's going up, catching the football like he's a receiver. Anyway, unbelievable player. But he's aging and he's hurt. And that was the issue, and Green Bay's issue. Is he going to stay healthy? And maybe they're right. Maybe he's not going to stay healthy. But when he's on the field, it's pretty amazing the impact he has. And that's a guy nobody talks about. As far as receivers, it's hard to argue against AJ because of the impact he has on this team when he's not on the field. I don't think he's the best receiver in football. But I think other teams, Minnesota most notably, you're talking about Miami because you're talking about Tyreek Hill. And I also think Jamar Chase is phenomenal. But they're 1-4. Maybe it's the Eagles and Cowboys again with CeeDee Lamb because CeeDee Lamb is all the Cowboys seem to have. And they have nothing else. But AJ is unbelievable. And he's the best pure football player on the Eagles. And yeah, some people have problem with his antics, whatever you want to call it. People are always James. People are always going to have problem with everybody if they lose.
I think the AJ Brown. I think the AJ Brown antics thing is the most overrated thing in the world. Every time I look at AJ Brown, he's doing something good. I'm like, I don't see it. I don't see diva from him at all.
Well, not from a work ethic standpoint and that kind of stuff. And people don't get to see these guys behind the scenes. And the two most notable would be AJ and Slay. And it's people can't understand why they're team captains. And I think a lot of people think Nick Sirianni's making them team captains because they're good. No, their teammates are voting them that because they have tremendous respect for them. But, you know, they go on social media. They both had troubles on social media. That's 99% of the problem. You can't control people's perception of you. And for whatever reason, this generation can't get the hell away from social media.
Yeah, I didn't have much of a problem with what AJ did. I thought Slays was a little bit, obnoxious, and I wasn't a fan of that. Also, what do you think of? I know you keep saying that, and part of me wonders, like, should it be that way? That the team selecting the captains, like, should it be like that, or should there be a leader that's picking the captains? If you know what I'm saying.
Doug did it once. Doug picked him during the COVID year. That didn't work out because guys weren't around, and that was a disastrous year. I don't think captains are that important. So, I don't know what the big deal is, but yeah, I would leave it up to the players to name their captains. Why? I don't know why declaring captains would be a better way. I'll just say, if the team isn't voting the quarterback as a captain, you got a problem.
That's true. That's true.
And the Eagles in Jalen as a captain, so that's not an issue. But that's the only, who's the leaders on the field? The quarterback and really the middle linebacker. Or it could be nowadays, the league has changed so much. Sometimes it's a safety. As long as those guys are handling things on the field, those are the leaders of your football team that matter. I don't really care about the C. That's more of a hockey thing. Who cares?
Yeah.
Other than maybe it's cool for Jersey people to get to see. And
I have a hockey background. Maybe that's why I care about the captain.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a bigger deal in hockey for whatever reason. And I'm not a hockey guy, but in football, it's like, who cares? And they got 7 of them. How many they got? Half the freaking team as captains. Who cares?
Let's get to our commercial break. Appreciate everybody in the chat for being here this morning on Birds 365. Got a great crowd as always, so I appreciate all of you guys. Hit that like button. We're going to come back. I'm going to talk to John a little bit about the NFC East. Where are the Eagles looking right now in the NFC East? I know we're only 4 games under our belt, 5 games under the rest of their belts. I don't know when their bye weeks are around the NFC East, but, NFC East, I mean, we got 6 games versus the NFC East coming on. They're not going to be shoo-ins. I don't even think for the Giants is going to be a shoo-in. So we'll talk about that next on here on Birds 365. Hit that like button, everybody. Appreciate you all being here. We'll be right back in 3 minutes.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.
He's blocked well and tries to cut through the middle. Oh!
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on Sports Grid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on Sports Grid.
Score and save at Southeastern PA and Delaware with Colony Pools this football season, and let the experts close your pool with a custom Merlin safety cover in green for the birds. And if you join our Winter Watch team, we'll give you another 20% off, and Colony Pools will handle it all. Keep your tiles on your pool, not in your pool. Fly with Colony right now, Birds fans. Visit flywithcolony.com.
Hi everybody, my name's Jason Lombardi. I'm an inspector at Dry Tech. At DryTech, we offer three major services, the first one being basement waterproofing. The second service we offer is foundation and structural repairs. And then the third service that we offer is mold remediation. If you feel you are having a waterproofing issue, give DryTech a call or check us out online.
Heading down the shore. Have a ball once more.
Here, imaginations run wild and time stands still. Because here, you can find the best of the Jersey Shore, all on one 5-mile island. So leave the old you behind and get lost in the woods.
Wild, wild, wildwood days.
Plan your stay in the Wildwoods today.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome back in, everybody, to a Tuesday edition of Birds 365. Moving right along, getting ready for Week 6. Eagles Game 5 in Week 6 here, just coming off their bye week, taking on the Cleveland Browns at home this week. The lowly Cleveland Browns. They traded away, what did they trade away? 5 draft picks to pick up Deshaun Watson.
Lowly, yeah. That was a
3
mistake.
first rounders at 22, at 23, and at 24. I got it on the screen right now. 5 years, $230 million fully guaranteed. A $72.9 million cap hit and a $172 million dead cap. And they can't win a ball game. They look putrid. So the Eagles should take advantage of that Browns team that just does not look good. We'll see how that game goes. John, I want to talk to you about the NFC East. So far, the NFC East is now looking a little bit, I don't want to say NFC beast, but they're not looking like the NFC least. You look at the back end of the schedule coming into the year, and everyone's like, oh, you have the Giants and the Commanders, 2 of the last 3 games. That's easy. I don't think any game with the NFC East is going to be easy this year. How are you viewing the NFC East right now, and do you still think the Eagles are the top dog in the NFC East?
Probably. I don't think the NFC East is the NFC Beast, though. I think that's the NFC North.
Yeah, they're not quite the NFC Beast.
I don't think the Giants are very good. Hat tip to beating Seattle on the road, but this is the NFL, and that doesn't mean they don't have good players. They do. And everybody, that's when he said there's no gimme games. They didn't beat the Giants last year when they were terrible.
With who was the quarterback last year for that game?
Well, they lost A.J. Brown. That's the reason. They lost A.J. Brown.
What was the quarterback's name, John, that beat us? Tommy DeVito. Tommy DeVito. That's right. I forgot his name.
Yeah, I had to think about it. AJ went out in the first. AJ got hurt in the first quarter of that game, and they couldn't do anything. And then they went to the playoffs with that. AJ couldn't do anything, and haven't been able to do anything for the most part. It's pathetic the way this team handles that particular player not on the field. But yeah, and Dallas is clearly not as good. Dallas has won, 12 games, 3 consecutive years? I mean, they've been very good and just, not lived up to expectations in the playoffs. They're no longer that team. So they've gotten worse. And then Washington is the outlier. They've gotten significantly better. So how legitimate is Washington? I think we're having an RG3 rookie situation. I think they are legitimate. I think they are going to be a playoff contender. But again, it's very early. I could be overstepping my bounds because I like the player, but boy, he's tough to deal with. So in a lot of ways, I don't think it's as good as people think it is right now. And that's partially the Eagles too, because I think the Eagles are overrated. I think the Cowboys are overrated. I think the Giants stink. And I think possibly Washington could be good. That's where I think the NFC East is.
I think that Washington team is legit, as you point out. I mean, we'll see how they continue to get better. I don't know, John. I mean, I don't want to say it, but right now, I think the Eagles are the 3rd best team in the NFC East.
I still think they're number 2 right now behind Washington. I assume you mean
Dallas has this
Dallas.
weird- Dallas has this weird ability to-
Dallas is not playing well.
and they're not that good. But Dallas has this weird ability to win games. It's just regular season games. It's never playoff games. It hasn't been in 30 years. But they always seem to win a lot of games in the regular season. They always seem to put up a good fight versus the Eagles.
Well, they were good. They were good. They were good. That's why they won a bunch of games, because they were good. They just didn't live up to it in the playoffs, but they were good and they were talented and they had a bunch of good players. The offense has, it's basically CD Lamb or bust. A little bit of Ferguson, who's a pretty good tight end. The running game is, when they had Tony Pollard, not a big name, but very effective. Before that, Ezekiel Elliott at the prime of his career was obviously very good. He's no longer anything near close to that. They had complementary receivers as well. Always have good tight ends. Always had a good offensive line. The offensive line's not as good as it used to be. As I mentioned, they don't have the complementary receivers. The running game isn't there on a consistent basis. Not the same team. Defensively, they don't even have Micah right now. DeMarcus Lawrence is on IR. I think they got a schedule break because they got to deal with Justin Fields, who still stinks.
Yeah.
And that limits Pittsburgh offensively, so that helped Dallas. I think people say, oh, maybe they're starting now. They were just playing a really bad quarterback that was limited. I'm down on Dallas, and I don't think they're better than the Eagles. Washington, very early, but they might be better than the Eagles.
Yeah,
I'm not saying they are.
Yeah, it is early. I mean, I don't know who Washington has beat. I mean, I know some of them. I don't know them all off the top of my head, but I don't think they've beat any major.
Well,
maybe the Ravens this week. That'll be a good test.
Yeah, and I
They beat
expect
the Giants. No, they lost to the Bucks. They beat the Giants. They beat the Bengals. That's a good win for them. They throttled the Cardinals, and then they beat the Browns. So,
and by the way, I do think Baltimore will beat them. So, I mean, we'll see. But I do think it's pretty evident that Jaden Daniels is really tough to deal with. You to your point, their running game has been crazy because Brian Robinson's a pretty good player who's become better because of the +1 effect of Jaden Daniels. Still not in love with their receivers, but again, to your point, he's elevating people very early in his career. Olamide Zaccheaus being notable.
We clamored all offseason for a wide receiver 3. How about that guy?
Diami Brown. Who's that? He's making big plays down the field. Zach Ertz looks a little bit revitalized. Their offensive line doesn't look good on paper, but they got a bunch of guys who know how to play and who played, Super Bowl. Wiley's been in the Super Bowl. Allegretti's been in the Super Bowl. Tyler Biadasz has been a good player. Sam Cosmi's their one good offensive lineman. So they're okay. And then defensively, you know what they went out and did? They got Bobby Wagner and Frankie Luvu. Again, linebackers. Seems like everybody in this league values linebackers more than the Philadelphia Eagles. And Bobby's not, he's aging, but again, sort of like quarterback, he just knows how to play. And he's still wildly athletic. I don't know how he keeps it going at this stage. But he's going to the Hall of Fame. And he's right in the middle of that defense. And Frankie Luvu's another player who can make plays. And they overturned everything. 33 new players, 17 new starters. And nobody knows what to do with Jaden Daniels. I'm way more concerned with the Washington Commanders than the Dallas Cowboys. And maybe I'm overreacting to a small sample size, but that's where I am with the NFC East.
No, yeah, I think you're. I mean, I don't think you're far off. I'm not saying the Cowboys are. Yeah, I mean, I don't think they're better than us. I'm just they scare me. They always do in the regular season, and we'll see how it all plays out. We got a super chat here from Sean Mims. Sean, thank you, brother. Why can't we wait? Why we can't wait till league get a book on Daniels just like they did Hurts? Let's see next year. Sean, we are going to see next year. But we gotta analyze this year, brother. We got to get through this year first. And
That's
right now,
why I bring up RG3. If you remember RG3's rookie season, nobody knew what to do with him. Yes, now he got hurt, but yes, when teams make adjustment, then it's going to be on Jane Daniels. But that's not going to come in a substantive way until the offseason. It's a copycat league, but it's a very slow moving copycat league.
You ever worry about that with Jalen Hurts, John?
Worry about what?
That the league has caught up to him, and that's why I asked about the pro style offense, because I wonder if the league has caught up to some of his style of play, and
definitely.
In order for him to get better, he would need to evolve his game, add more to his repertoire, and evolve as a quarterback. And I don't know if I've seen that, which maybe isn't a knock, but maybe the league has just kind of figured out how to defend it.
I definitely think they have caught up, no doubt about it, and they're playing Jalen Hurts better, and the adjustments to that adjustment have not been made to a point where you have the same kind of success. Nick got a lot of criticism for not making those adjustments last year, and it had an interview with Jeff McMullen where he said early before the season started, it's not about evolving, it's about getting better at what you do. Just keep getting better and better and better and better at what you do well. And I think he was right. But the nature of this league is if you're not having success, you make change. And again, it's very, very, as to Vic Fangio's point, patience is not a virtue around. Forget about fans. It's not a virtue with organizations in this league. Very few people have the discipline to stay patient. And one of the reasons why is because they don't have the time to stay patient. So if something's not working, they immediately go and let's do something else. Jalen Hurts is not a traditional NFL quarterback. I'm talking about traditional play action, under center, old school pocket style quarter. That's not what he does well. So why do people want him to do more of it? It makes
to answer your question is because I think people think it wins more.
No
Whether
quarterback
right or wrong. That's the belief. Well, they're not entirely wrong. I mean, look at
they are entirely wrong from the standpoint of no quarterback has had more success than Jalen Hurts in the history of the Philadelphia Eagles from a winning percentage standpoint. Now, has that obviously you had the great spike from 2-5 in 2021 to 10-1 last season, which was the greatest stretch of football in Philadelphia Eagles history. And I think that's what Nick was talking about. Like, all right, people are going to adjust, sharpen it up. Just keep improving on what you do well, and you're so good at it, you'll continue to stay ahead of the curve. I think he was right. We're past that now, though. And maybe that explains the deficiencies in Jalen Hurts' game. Trying to get him to a level of, and by the way, you got to fight with the player as well. He wants this autonomy at the line of scrimmage. Maybe he shouldn't have it.
Yeah.
But this is all very delicate. But at the bottom line, coaching is.
What do you mean delicate? Nobody wants to talk about it or what?
No, delicate in the way you have to handle it. Like, how do you tell the quarterback who wants autonomy, hey, guess what? You're not good at it. Let this guy who's good at it handle it. That's what I mean. No, I don't care if anybody.
Is Jalen getting coached hard enough? I mean, he always talked about that early in his career. I love hard coaching.
Yeah, I think he does because he comes from a coaching family.
Yeah, but
I
is he
think he
getting
does
it in
love
Philly?
hard coaching. Do people push back on him at what he doesn't do well? Probably not. But that's with every quarterback.
Yeah.
Like, how do you think there's tremendous pushback to Aaron Rodgers? You know, he dismisses his own head coach.
Yeah, but
You know, he waves him off like he's not even
I'm not ready to compare the two.
a human being. I'm just saying, I'm not comparing the two. I'm saying you see some of the, you know, Bill Belichick and Tom Brady didn't like each other at the end. Why? You know, with all due respect to Tom, you know, Bill's trying to push him, and he's like, I'm Tom freaking Brady. You know, I got it. And he did for the most part. And I'm not trying to compare it, but I'm just trying to compare the relationships. Quarterbacks by nature. I mean, think about it, Zander. You are the guy, and everybody tells you how great you are, and you think you're not going to have an ego.
Yeah, it's true.
These guys got massive egos, and they don't want to be told what to do. And I guarantee you, the first thing Jalen Hurts should be told, let's let Cam Jurgens handle the protection issue. I wouldn't even have gone down that route, but he wants it. So how do you stop it? What you do is you bring in a new offensive coordinator, says, yeah, I'll let him have it. And now you see some of the issues. Now, I'm not saying that's the only issue. I'm not saying it even is an issue. But it hasn't looked great, and maybe it improves when AJ gets back, and obviously the talent's going to rise to the top, and they're going to win a lot of football games, and they're going to have a lot of big plays because they have better players. But when you're talking about the small margin of error about going to a Super Bowl or getting to that level, all that little stuff adds up and matters. And, you know, I know Nick Foles just retired. Like Nick Foles, you know, people always said, and people were saying it to the end, why is Nick Foles so good on the Eagles and stinks everywhere else? And I don't think anybody can answer that. But I know Nick Foles says Kelsey was a big part of it because he didn't have to worry. When he went to other players, he had to do that stuff other places, and he wasn't good at it. And he didn't have to worry about it here. And I'm not saying Cam Jurgens is at the level of Jason Kelsey, but I do know Jeff Stoutland talks about his football IQ and his ability, and he at least has the potential to be very good at it. And this is just one small piece of the puzzle I'm talking about. But, yeah, I mean, Jalen's so focused on this autonomy he's always wanted. It's like, worry about the other stuff, dude.
Right. Do you think that's part of the reason that, you know, or that, I don't know, maybe is it something that you think is going wrong right now in the offense, that there's a learning curve on that's happening, that's slowing everything else down?
Yeah, I think so. Certainly when, again, I think AJ's absence has exposed a lot of things, and you're not going to elevate others when you're bogged down. All right, I got to do this, I got to do that, I got to do this, instead of just stepping back and being the playmaker that you are and you once were and still could be. I think that explains a lot of it.
Yeah. I wonder if, and I'm not going to profess to be smart enough to know this answer, but I do wonder if a lot of the problems are coming from the pre-snap read, or are they the post-snap getting through your progressions quick enough to make it look like you made the right read pre-snap, if that makes sense.
Well, 90% of the league tries to hold off to tipping what they're going to do post snap now. That's the big Fangio effect.
Right.
That's the whole thing. You want to show the same shell for the most part, and then spin off into whatever coverage. And the whole thought process behind that is, even if it's a snap, a split second, the quarterback has to sort of identify what's going on post snap. It makes it a little bit easier for the defense. That's the whole philosophy behind it. And that's what every quarterback is dealing with, not just Jalen Hurts. And some people are better at it and some people don't. I talk about Aaron all the time. And he got picked sixth because he didn't see Van Ginkel dropping into coverage. And that dude has seen everything. And he got
two dudes that would have changed this season for the Eagles: Van Ginkel and Xavier McKinney.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they've both been great. And certainly Vic had tremendous success with Van Ginkel in Miami last year. We all looked at that and said, oh, well, that's a player the Eagles should go after. And I know a lot of people, I don't think it was the case. I think he's from there. He's from either North Dakota, South Dakota, somewhere. But he was a Vikings fan. I think that was that. I think he wanted to go there. With McKinney, they wanted that player badly and just thought it got too high. But he's been great.
You agree with that?
No,
would you have done it if you were the GM?
I would have paid him. If I could have got him, I would have paid him.
I agree, especially when you see it's easy to say now when you see the impact, but let's go to one more super chat.
But I've always said about McKinney, I remember back to the days of the Jalen Reagor game against the Giants, where he dropped 2 passes at the end of the game. Terrible game for the Eagles, but they had a chance to win it at the end. And there was this one play where, you know how people take the snapshots and so-and-so is wide open. And I'm like, that's Xavier McKinney back there, dude. You have no idea how quickly those openings close in the NFL.
Right.
And I was saying, and you're an Alabama guy, you should know about McKinney.
Yeah, McKinney, I mean, he was great in college, great now.
I'm like, that will close in a split second. And everybody, oh, he's wide open. I'm like, no, he's not. Not in the NFL. Yeah, he's been a good player for a long time now, McKinney.
Yeah, he's really good. One more super chat here from James Parver. James, thank you, brother. Appreciate your support today, my man. Appreciate everybody in the chat today. I always thought Jaden was deserving of number 1, but kept being told I was an SEC homer. James, me and you both get that a lot. But I think just like Jaden is benefiting significantly from being unknown. He'll be the best 2024 drafted QB, but this year is an early blip. Fair point.
Well, obviously it's early, but I mean, the same thing happened. You know, he's so unique and so dynamic. People haven't seen that ability. And yeah, it's difficult. And that's why I said that's one of the things they will make adjustments, but generally it will not come until the off season. So it's going to be tough to deal with this year. That doesn't mean he's not going to have a bad game here and there, but he's going to keep making plays because it's pretty evident they don't know what to do with him. Now, generally, Vic Fangio is going to have going to show up better against young quarterbacks than veteran quarterbacks who know what they're looking at. So maybe that helps the Eagles. Maybe it doesn't. My test for everybody is Flores. Everybody, if you got to play Flores, it's like you're seeing stuff you've never seen before. But the Eagles don't have to do that, at least till a potential playoff matchup. I do not believe Daniels has that test either. But yeah, so many defenses are the same now. But with rookie quarterbacks, it's always hit and miss. That's why you'll see Caleb Williams. It's 1 week it's great, 1 week it's awful. But Daniels seems to have a better sort of floor as a rookie quarterback. You're muted, Zander.
I'm excited to see those Eagles versus Commanders games this year to see how he looks, what Vic can do to a young player like that. I thought he was going to have his work cut out. I mean, he was going up against Cardinals. I thought JG would give him a good test. He destroyed them 42-14. They won. And then I thought Jim Schwartz would do all right with the Browns last week versus him, but he didn't do. I mean, he did okay. Jaden didn't look quite as good.
Jim shut him down compared to other teams. He had like an 85% completion percentage.
I know. Yeah. I think versus Gannon, he was at 85%. It was crazy number. So, he was 26 of 30 for 230 and a touchdown.
Jim kind of slowed him down.
Yeah, Jim slowed him a little bit.
Yeah, so he's just really good. And I'm concerned long term. Can his style of play be sustainable long term? He's going to get banged up. I mean,
well, that's where I'm wondering with Jalen.
Yeah, he's already banged up. Jalen's already not the same guy he was.
I know. 100% he's not the same guy. And that's my worry of like why I think people are looking for him to get better at the pro style offense, or at least, show improvement and being able to, work from the pocket. And he's shown some, but, nothing on a big level. And there's, John, the more videos that come out on him, it's not helping his case. I mean, there's a bunch of dudes doing film breakdowns, and everybody can believe what they want to believe, but it doesn't help as the case in terms of, showing that he's getting better in that regard. And then people you bring him up, Cam Newton, and RG3. I mean, how long does that style of quarterback last in this league? Not that long. So I think that's one of the other things that people factor in when talking about Jalen.
Well, I've always maintained with Jalen Hurts, and I've maintained this with any quarterback that has a mobility-based style. It just, the shelf life is not going to – they're not playing like to the level of Tom Brady in their 40s, all right? You know that going in. You don't try to turn them into Tom Brady. Take advantage of the shelf life they have. Take advantage of the shelf life they do have instead of trying to turn them into something that they're never going to be. That's where I am with that. Jaden Daniels, take advantage of the shelf life you do have if you're the Washington Commanders.
Yep, we'll see how it all works out. With that, I just wonder if the league caught up to Jalen, and that's part of my concern with him. Remember, I mean, I'm an Eagles fan. I want this team to win. It's starting to look more and more bleak, with getting, we talk about getting back to the 22 form and getting back to the Super Bowl. Like right now, I watch the league. I don't see it with the Eagles. Now, it's early in the year. They could turn it around. They got a 13-game run here.
Yeah, but man, people don't know. Who were they missing, Zander? Now, I have no problem.
I know, but that's
you have issues with the defense. Perfect. If you have issues with the defense, I have no problem. But again, so much of this league is dependent on attrition, and you got 2 undefeated teams right now. Guess what? You're already seeing it on one of them, where we have Aaron Jones is banged up, Sam Darnold got banged up, Kansas City. In the past, and they've been able to persevere, and that's why they're Kansas City, and deservedly so as a dynasty team. Derek Carr for 2 weeks. Oh, how good are the Saints? Bunch of injuries on the offensive line. Bang. The Saints are one of the worst stinking teams in football all of a sudden. They can't do anything. They're signing people off a practice squad.
Yeah.
So much of this league is based on attrition. The Eagles, if you want to look for a silver lining, they had a bunch of attrition early. They're still at 500, and here come their 3 best players.
Yeah, I know.
I am not worried about this team right now.
But the problem with that, John, is the overwhelming amount of NFL teams every single year. And if you pulled the data from the last 10, 20 years, 99% of them, I would say, don't make it to the end of the year with all their starters.
Well,
So
I'm not
you're
saying that. I'm saying
though, if we're saying that any of this adversity means we're going to stink on ice, we're in trouble. Everything's got to be perfect for this team to be good. And it's an uphill battle in the NFL.
It's 2-2. First of all, they're as I said, they're keeping their head even with the water without those guys. Yeah, we already saw it at the end of last season. Week 18, first quarter, AJ Brown knee injury, season over. Didn't know it
before that game, though. Come on, don't give me that. They sucked those last 7 weeks. That wasn't just a week 18 problem.
That now, see, that's again.
I know it got worse, but
did it get worse? I mean, I don't know, like what, and certainly I get it because of the perspective of how bad that collapse was. I don't know. Did people sleep through week 16 and week 17?
Yeah, but John,
they were in week 16 and week 17. They were a top 5 offense, top 5 points, top 5 yards.
John, were they 1-6 in the last 7 games or not? They sucked, dude. They sucked.
But again, you're saying they sucked the entire time. Offensively, they sucked. They got destroyed. It all started with San Francisco and Dallas. They got destroyed.
Yeah.
In those 2 particular games. Then the Seattle game sets up. They should have won that game. They lost that game. Jalen Hurts made a big mistake. We all know. Blah, blah, blah. Then they were off the charts good offensively. Giants and Cardinals. They beat the Giants, lost to the Cardinals in a shootout. Top 5 and everything. And then AJ got hurt in the first quarter and the season's over. Yeah, I don't care. You can say they were 1-6 at the end. Yeah, they were 1-6 at the end. All I'm saying is the fact that they were bad offensively the entire time is not factual. That's all I'm saying. It's not factual. I don't care if you believe it. It's not factual.
Yeah, I mean, you're saying from an offensive standpoint, they weren't bad.
Well, the defense was the far bigger problem.
Well, Big Smooth brings up a good point. I mean, we just watched Joe Burrow throw 5 touchdown passes and still lose. So you need a good defense. You're right about that, Big Smooth.
Yeah. All I'm saying is that part of this narrative is not factual. It isn't. But people, forget, which is fine.
Yeah, but is that, you always talk about how stats need context. Did that offense look the same to you after week 12 as it did?
No, they didn't look the same to me from the San Francisco game on.
Right.
They got their.
But you're saying after that they were still a top 5 offense.
Well, they were top 5. No, they were top 5 for a short window. Everybody was like they were consistently bad the rest of the season. No, they weren't. They had moments, which people forget, but it doesn't matter. Ultimately, I think that San Francisco game, they got so outplayed and so destroyed. And remember, when we're talking about this team at 10-1 and the narrative of the most miserable 10-1 team in the history of the world, which was probably true. I don't know how you measure that. I was blame, everybody looks, and I still don't think the organization knows what went wrong. I believe, my personal belief is they collapsed under the weight of the expectations, which were outrageous and only got bigger when they were 10-1. And then San Francisco came in here on the road and absolutely decimated them. And it became clear this is not a Super Bowl team. And all of a sudden, the snowball starts rolling down the hill. That's my belief of what happened. No, that doesn't mean that's what happened. I don't think anybody could figure out the collapse as an entirety. And by the way, even if you look at, they had Seattle beat if there wasn't for a dumb decision by the quarterback and the best player on the team. They had that game. They were going to win that game. You never know. Ball can bounce a different way and you end up losing. It's the NFL. But I'm pretty confident they were going to win that game. They certainly should have beaten Arizona here. And it would have been interesting if you win Seattle, you beat the Giants, you beat the Cardinals, and AJ doesn't get hurt, and you beat the Giants again, you're basically winning 4 in a row to end the season.
That's a lot of ifs.
Yeah, but that's the point. That's the NFL.
Yeah.
That's the NFL. 2017 game, stupid play by the quarterback and the receiver. 35-31 game, one score game, Arizona. Obviously, we know that was the Sidney Brown game as well, with the 99-yard interception return, which may have been the most exciting Eagles play of the season if they had won. And then obviously AJ gets hurt. It's like this. Oh, they got destroyed in 2 games. San Francisco, Dallas. So I think the assumption is
AJ Brown was out there for both of them.
Oh no. Well, guess what? San Francisco was much better.
Yeah.
And Dallas certainly at AT&T Stadium. Remember, Dallas.
You remember what Nick Bosa said after that game, John? I think that those words are still ringing in many's ears.
Well, yeah,
I know. Was he wrong though?
I don't. But my whole point is that got expanded to every game was like San Francisco and Dallas, and that
I'm not saying that,
true.
but Jalen hasn't been the same guy since then. No.
Well, I mean, was Jalen playing that well when they were 10-1? I mean, when they were 10-1, you know, everybody was complaining about the style points, and Jalen's not this, and Jalen's not that, and Jalen's
but you can't cherry pick that because you tell me all the time how he was the winningest quarterback in Eagles history in that stretch, and you use those 10 games.
Well, he still is. No, I'm not saying. I'm saying. So which. I'm not talking about me. I'm talking about this narrative of Jalen hasn't been the same since San Francisco. Well, he wasn't the same since the Super Bowl. You know.
Well, that's fair.
Win or lose.
We talked about that yesterday.
Win or lose.
Since the contract that came after the Super Bowl.
Win or lose, he hasn't been the same player. From an effectiveness standpoint, just as an individual. So that's kind of what I'm saying. I'm saying,
says, did we not get stomped by the Giants backups? He's right about that.
Well, they got stomped. Yeah, look, the minute I've said this a million times, the minute AJ leaves the field, it's embarrassing. And I don't know why, other than I talk about all the time how great a player he is, but you have to persevere better than they are able to do when AJ Brown is not on the field.
It's amazing how much this team needs AJ Brown. I mean, the thing that concerns me is that you don't see that often, and it's just like
you never see it. That's my point.
That's why is this a setup for failure, Johnny Mac? Do you not see what I'm saying?
Like James is bringing up, James Carver's bringing up AJ's the MVP because how bad they are on the field. And he's not the MVP, but it sure looks like he is when he's not on the field. Like, I can't get why this team can't persevere better.
Isn't that on the quarterback? I'm not even trying to pick on the guy. I'm just look around when other teams lose.
I'll tell you what. I'd rather have you picking on the quarterback than all the other, it's Nick Sirianni's fault. It's his fault. Blah, blah, blah. Coaches aren't out there.
Well, I don't fall fully in the camp of Nick has no blame, but I do put it more on the players. I mean,
I'm not saying he has no blame.
Like, I don't think he's been a great coach right now. Here's where I think Nick struggles. I think Nick struggles when adversity hits. I don't think he fully, and this might be just a young coach learning on the job, and there's a learning curve. And, we had Marcus Hayes on who gave a great explanation. Like, it takes time. Like, look at Andy Reid, right? It does take time for these young coaches. I don't think he handles the adversity well. Like, I don't think he knows how to get these dudes back on track. He was great when we were 27-2. But
he had a lot of adversity when they were 2-5, and he's getting raked over the coals.
That's fair comeback
for, the Blower thing, and people are throwing Blowers at him, and Vegas, he handled that pretty well.
Really cracks me up, John. This city is hilarious.
I mean, I think he's an average NFL coach. I don't think he's a good NFL coach. I don't think he's a bad NFL coach.
If he gets fired here in Philly, I think he's going to get another job.
Yes. He's still young
He'd have
enough
to be head coach, right? I mean, he kind of stripped himself as the whole offensive genius thing.
Yeah. He said, people outside of the city look at that record and go, what the hell's going on in Philadelphia?
Yeah.
Eventually,
everybody's going to wake up to the fact that it's deeper than the coach or the quarterback, and maybe there's a problem with the guys upstairs. But anyway, we'll save all those conversations for another day. Johnny Mac, we're overtime, man. Great show today. Appreciate everybody in the chat. Got a good crowd still in here with us all the way through to the end. That's JAKIB Faithful, JAKIB Nation showing out. So appreciate each and every one of you guys in the chat. Hit that like button. I'm not sure what we got up to on the like count. But anyway, I do see everybody checking in right now. So thanks everybody for a great day of chats. I always appreciate all of you guys being in here, sharing your thoughts. Johnny Mac, great show today, man. I'll talk to you tomorrow morning. All right, brother?
All right. Get off the bridges. Everything's fine. Cleveland is coming.
I don't know, John. That conversation has me riding right to the Ben Franklin after this show.
All right. Wait till this week. Then maybe head to the Ben Franklin.
Yeah, if they
lose that game, then you're in problem. Then
they lose this game. There's nothing you can say on this show that'll keep me away from that sucker.
That's a lot of pressure. That's adversity. Us versus
we talked
them.
About a pre-show. You're like, I wouldn't worry too much about this game this week, and I think you're right. That's the obvious way to look at it. But shit, this team has showed that they will shock us in more ways than one. So we'll see how it goes. John, great show, man. I'll catch you tomorrow, all right, brother?
All right, thanks everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Hit that like button on your way out. Catch you guys tomorrow morning on Birds 365.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate inside the locker room and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.